gonna take crackerjack timing, Wang.
Total concentration. You ready, Jack?
I was born ready.
Welcome back to the channel. This is Wes, and today I'm going to review X-Men Fantastic Four from writer Chip Zdarsky with art from Terry and Rachel Dodson. I'm very happy to see Zdarsky back with the Fantastic Four. I loved his run on 2-in-1. I was very disappointed when he wasn't handed the reins to the Fantastic Four relaunch a couple years ago when Dan Slott got the gig. So I'm very excited for Zdarsky to be back with the first family of Marvel Comics. As far as Dawn of X goes, I think Ben Percy and Ed Brisson are really good writers, but Chip Zdarsky is the first writer that I think can really challenge Jonathan Hickman for the status of best writer. In fact, in my opinion, I would say Chip Zdarsky is a better writer right now, at least as far as Marvel Comics go. I think he's the best writer at Marvel Comics, even better than Donny Cates and Jonathan Hickman. He hasn't had the big events like Absolute Carnage or Infinity or Secret Wars like Cates and Hickman have, but for my money, he's the best writer at Marvel Comics. The first issue of X-Men Fantastic Four is a bit of a slow burn, but there are so many excellent character moments, and we get some great action at the end, and I was absolutely glued to this comic book. X-Men Fantastic Four is a 4-part miniseries, so if you're not looking to fully invest in a long-term story, this is definitely the Dawn of X series for you. This definitely lives up to my lofty expectations and then some. I highly recommend X-Men Fantastic Four, and it's right on the verge of being the highest recommendation. Now let's talk about all the details in today's comic book review. As I mentioned earlier, Terry and Rachel Dodson are on the art duties in this comic book. They're a wonderful pairing. Of course, they're a married couple as well. The characteristic that always stands out about the Dodsons' art is that it's exceptionally pleasant to look at. You know, it's the kind of art that really makes you smile, and it makes for a wonderful viewing experience. They have beautiful line work. I especially like the curvature of the lines. Like I mentioned earlier, it's really pleasant to look at. Their art style does have a bit of a cartoony feel, but I mean that in the best way possible. I like that their art isn't overly rendered like you see in so many comic books today. There's always just enough detail to tell the story, but they never oversaturate the page with unnecessary background details. It makes the art feel like it's timeless, like it would fit in almost any era of comic books art. The Dodsons' work would look great on newsprint, and if Marvel ever wanted to re-enter the drugstore market, get their books back on spinner racks at a cheaper price, it would be wise to utilize the Dodsons front and center, in my opinion. They also clearly have a very special place in their heart for Kitty Pryde. She looks like $1,000,000 in this comic book. Her look in X-Men Fantastic Four is far superior, and I mean far superior, than her look in Marauders. As far as the gamut of Dawn of X artwork goes, I put this right up there with Cassera's work on X-Force and R.B. Silva's recent return in X-Men #5. It's great, it stands up with all that, it's definitely at the top of the heap as far as Dawn of X artwork goes. And I almost forgot, Laura Martin is one of the best color artists in the world. She synergizes perfectly with the Dodsons' line art and is an integral part in making this comic look so fantastic. I rate the art 4.5 out of 5. As far as the plot from Chip Zdarsky, this continues a confrontation between the X-Men and Fantastic Four that began in House of X #1. Franklin Richards is an exceptionally powerful mutant whose parents also happen to be Reed Richards and Sue Storm. Franklin is essentially a character or a boy of two worlds, man and mutants. Franklin's parents are trying to protect him, and Reed maybe makes a couple of missteps that I'll talk about here in a minute, but he's also a child of Krakoa, and Charles and Magneto have shown up with the X-Men to bring the prodigal son home. It's important to remember that Franklin Richards is one of 11 Omega-level mutants in the entire universe here, and in House of X Powers of 10, it was made abundantly clear that the most precious resource in all of Krakoa are Omega-level mutants, even more precious than the flowers that they're using basically to bring the world to heal. So the basic plot of this story is a struggle between two houses over Franklin and his future. There are a ton of interesting reveals and character perspectives that lend weight to the plot. It's very well executed. Admittedly, like I mentioned earlier, it starts out a bit slow, but by the end, I was on the edge of my seat and couldn't have been more excited by this comic book. While I did really enjoy the plot, it is somewhat predictable, so I'll rate it 4 out of 5. Alright, let's get into the characterization, which is definitely the best part of this comic book. One of the first things we learn is that Franklin's powers are waning. Nobody is sure why this is happening. His father, Reed Richards, is running tests on him to try to determine what's wrong with him, how they can restore his power levels. During the comic, it's revealed that Reed Richards has already placed a tracking device on his son, which apparently happened during Dan Slott's ongoing Fantastic Four run. One of the bigger reveals in this comic is that while Reed is doing these tests, he's actually fit Franklin with another device to mask his X gene and deny him access to Krakoa. I get the feeling that maybe I'm not supposed to side with Reed on this one, but as a father, I'm 100% on board with what he's doing. His son, at full power, can create new universes. He has potentially an unlimited power set. If I was his father, I want to know where he is, and I certainly don't want him in Krakoa. Despite siding with Mr. Fantastic on this, Zdarsky does do a great job of creating empathy for Franklin throughout the comic book, and you definitely understand where he's coming from and why he would be upset with these turn of events. The next character I want to talk about is Ben Grimm. As far as I'm concerned, he comes off as the best character in the entire comic book. Not a huge surprise, he's one of the best characters in all of comics. He's very supportive of Franklin while not undermining his father and his work. In my opinion, one of the biggest issues with Dawn of X so far is there's no really point of view character for readers. You rarely see a character really call out Charles Xavier or the X-Men on some of their bullshit, and Ben Grimm is definitely one of them. At one point, after Wolverine of all people is claiming diplomatic immunity, he says, "Funny how the only folks who need diplomatic immunity are the ones doing wrong." Thank you, Chip Zdarsky. Thank you, Ben Grimm. I've been waiting to hear this the whole time. And even better is, I think Reed Richards, and to a lesser degree Sue Storm, are even more effective pointing out how off everything is in Krakoa and with the X-Men. During his meeting with Charles, Reed says, "You're acting like you're above humanity, buying us off with gifts of medicine." And after that, Magneto basically confirms that's exactly how they feel. Later on in the comic, Sue Storm takes them to task saying, "This family isn't about segregation. We want our children to live in a modern society where they can learn and grow with people who have different experiences." Exceptionally good characterization and dialogue explaining why Reed and Sue wouldn't want Franklin within a billion miles of Krakoa. And finally, in my opinion, the best scene in the entire comic, Reed Richards drops the mic on Charles. He says, "You're forcing a situation that would resolve itself in time. My son is almost a man. In a couple of years, he'd surely visit Krakoa on his own and maybe even stay for good." He's clearly aware that Charles has a plan he's setting in motion for Franklin, and he needs to protect him from Charles. He needs to protect him from Krakoa. He needs to protect him from Magneto. And this goes for the entire Fantastic Four family. Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben are all ready to fight to the death to protect their children, and how can you not root for that? As far as the characterization of Charles and Eric in this comic, this has to be on purpose. When I was done reading this, all I could think about are what scumbags Charles and Eric look like trying to steal someone else's child. Charles is even using Kitty to manipulate Franklin, stating, "Eric and I know that you and Franklin have a special history. Out of all of us, he's likely to trust you the most." And at that moment, there's an unnerving smirk on Charles Xavier's face. Just great synergy between the writer and the artist. And also an excellent callback to the 1987 Fantastic Four vs. X-Men miniseries. Charles Xavier arrived to confront the Fantastic Four to purposely create conflict between a father and a son for his own purposes. What those are is undetermined right now, but you can see that he's manipulating things. He's trying to use people because he needs access to Franklin. And ultimately, it's Eric that lets the cat out of the bag. During the big conflicts, he states, "Your child doesn't belong to you. He is a mutant. He is power." Eric and Charles don't want Franklin because he's a mutant. They want him because he's powerful. They want to wield his power. They clearly had plans to use him to expand their position and power in the world. X-Men Fantastic Four #1 has excellent characterization and dialogue throughout, rivaling Hickman's best work on House of X, Powers of 10, or X-Men, in my opinion. There is a great amount of tension built out throughout the story. The Fantastic Four are undoubtedly the good guys in my mind. Even if Reed did a couple of things some people find wrong, I agree with him 100%. He's protecting his child. He's trying to keep him away from Krakoa, where clearly Charles and Eric are doing something sinister. They're doing something odd. Charles and the X-Men come off as really evil and exceptionally manipulative in this comic. I rate the characterization 5 out of 5. This is an excellent Dawn of X debut for Chip Zdarsky and the Dodsons. It picks right up on one of the best elements introduced in House of X #1, the confrontation between the Fantastic Four and the X-Men over Franklin Richards. We're finally seeing Dawn of X building on House of X, Powers of 10 outside of X-Force, so that's great to see. There's great build-up with tension after a slowish start to the story. By the end, I was fully invested in the story of Franklin Richards that Chip Zdarsky, Terry and Rachel Dodson, and Laura Martin were telling. I'm 100% Team Reed Richards over Team Charles Xavier. He's a good father trying to protect his children. Charles is trying to steal another man's child so he can wield his power for his own benefit. This is straight out of the villain playbook. And I'll also mention, I didn't even spoil all the huge reveals. There's even more in this comic book. There's a ton of great material in this comic book. I rate X-Men Fantastic Four #1 4.5 out of 5. I highly recommend this comic. This is bordering on a highest recommendation. If you liked House of X, Powers of 10, if you've been invested in Dawn of X, or even if you were disappointed, maybe step back a little bit, you are going to love this comic book. I think everyone will enjoy this. This is one of the best comics out this week. You need to read X-Men Fantastic Four #1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.